Hey folks, Alan Saunders, Derrick Bell from SteelersNow.com at St. Vincent College. Steelers just wrapped up their 7th practice of training camp 2024. Derrick's first, my 7th. So I'm going to let Derrick do most of the talking since he's got the new fresh opinions. A bunch of things happened today. We had another little dust up, a little skirmish. No pads today, so it was a lot of passing work, more than we've had the last 2 days, which were pretty run heavy. I got some one-on-ones again with the receivers and the DBs, and we also got a 2-minute drill to close practice. Let's start with 7 shots, though. That was the part that I was actually still down here. Steelers made a transaction today. I guess we can cover that first. Bringing back Marcus Golden, who had been a free agent since March, but was with the team last year. David Perales waived injured with that knee injury that he suffered yesterday. Looked pretty serious. So just some individual work for Golden today. No team in his first day back. But so I was doing that. You were at 7 shots. What would you take away from that first period of practice?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest matchups we saw today was Van Jefferson versus Dante Jackson. Jackson had a nice PBU breakup on a slant route, undercut the route, got his hands on the ball, and then the very next play, Van Jefferson got him back, was able to cross his face, caught a nice touchdown away from his frame. Fields, I think, scored twice in 7 shots. So defense won the period overall. I think it was 5-2. There was a questionable shovel pass that could have probably gone either way. But overall, like you said, no pass today, but still a really competitive practice overall with some tempers flaring a little bit.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts about the wide receivers. I think a lot of people have, since the injury to Roman Wilson, kind of been panicking a little bit about the state of the Steelers wide receivers. And I've been saying on here since about April that Calvin Austin looks like a different guy. This was your kind of first chance of getting your personal eyes on Van Jefferson. I don't think it's maybe as bad as people think if those two guys, along with George Pickens, are the Steelers' 3 wide receivers to start the season.
Right. So anytime the Steelers were in, 2 wide receiver sets, it looked like Van was getting the nod. But they did work, Calvin in. All 3 of those guys, those 2 and George Pickens, kind of rotating different alignments. You saw, George play a little bit on the outside and the inside. Same thing goes for both those 2 guys. I thought Van Jefferson had a really, really strong day. He caught a nice post route. We got to see our first Russell Wilson moonball of training camp, I think. Russ came in for 7-on-7. Beautiful deep post right over Van Jefferson's shoulder. He ended up beating Joey Porter on the play, so that was a really nice splash play from him. I thought overall, him and Dante Jackson had a bunch of really strong reps back and forth competing. And then Calvin Austin, one of the things I was looking forward to seeing with Calvin was how was he cutting? How did his route running look like? Last year dealing with the foot injury wasn't 100%, I don't think. But man, he looked really explosive in and out of his breaks, and I felt like anytime they were really running him on routes underneath or in the intermediate part of the field, I felt like he was getting consistent separation. So both those guys I feel like had really strong practices, but I feel like Van, he was probably the guy that surprised me the most today.
Yeah, Van got loose deep. George Pickens also got loose, had a big one from Justin Fields.
On a double move.
Yeah, double move. The ball ended up being underthrown a good bit, but George came back and got to it. And I think George, the defense has done a pretty good job of keeping a lid on him. Most of what we've seen so far, his impact has been in the middle of the field. But like you were saying, I think they're going to move him around a lot. I think a lot of people are thinking, if it's Calvin and it's Van, how are you going to keep teams from double covering George Pickens? Well, he scored a touchdown. We'll get to the 2-minute. He scored a touchdown being covered by Patrick Queen. That's how you do it. You put him in a different area of the field, and I think George has looked pretty good doing that.
Yeah, we still saw some of the same George Pickens type stuff that we're used to, right? He caught a really nice back shoulder play in that 2-minute drill to set them up in scoring position. But one of the things that I really wanted to note of was how he was being moved around the formation. We saw him in stacked alignments, as the back guy in the bunch. We saw him really getting a lot of free releases and even some scheme touches underneath that we didn't really see in years prior. A lot of his catches have been really those iso ball plays towards the sideline. We've seen him work a lot more in breakers. He won on a couple slants today. Those are things that I really wanted to see more of in Arthur Smith's offense. But yeah, I think like you said, just moving those guys around, being more position flexible, I think has been a really big key part of some of their success.
We'll talk about the big guys for a little bit here. We did have another dust up as Logan Lee and Anderson Hardy got into it after play. I think Spencer Anderson might have been involved as well. And then DeMarvin Leal just came in and wrecked the joint, throwing punches and swinging wildly. And I think he suplexed a guy. And then things calmed down again after that. But, man, just because the pads weren't on, it was another physical practice, it was another very competitive practice. We saw a good bit of chippiness back and forth throughout the day. The defense was kind of taking some liberties, I will say, with the tackling rules of the day. You're not supposed to really hit them down. And Patrick Queen kind of ran over Jalen Warren at one point. Miles Killebrew laid out LaMichael Pirine and was hearing it from the offense. So still some back and forth chippiness left over from yesterday, and I assume we're going to get more of that tomorrow. The other thing that was a big part of practice today, the new kickoff, the first time we've seen live ones, Matthew Wright and Chris Boswell kicking. Number 30 out there with the first return group. Now, Cordell Patterson's still on the non-football injury list. I assume he's going to be in that mix, but man, Jaylen Warren as a kickoff returner is probably something I think a lot of people weren't expecting, and I think they look pretty good out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the new kickoff rules, I think you're going to see a little bit more of a priority on guys with, vision, some contact balance, because, they're not really showing their cards out here right now, just keeping things pretty basic, understanding the rules and trying to get all that stuff down. But, you're going to see some run schemes incorporated. We're probably going to see some trick plays, once the real pads come on, towards the regular season and stuff like that. But, yeah, Jaylen getting the first team reps was definitely interesting to me. I think the second team returners ended up being Calvin Austin and Quez Watkins, so more of your traditional maybe kick returners, the guys with speed, things like that. But yeah, I mean, they spent 2 different periods, I think, of 10 minutes working on the kickoffs. Something kind of interesting, they were working on kind of different variations of it. They were looking on some low kicks, some high kicks to give the kickoff return team some different looks to give them good practice reps. So it was really interesting, a lot of emphasis being placed on that. And like you were saying about the dust up, yeah, just because no pads doesn't mean it wasn't really competitive, man. I will be honest, that's the first time I've ever seen someone suplex on a football field in person. It was almost like a WWE thing, and I've never seen so many flags fly in a 2-second span. I swear there was 10 flags that happened right in front of me. So yeah, probably the most comical portion of the day, but yeah, it was pretty wild.
Yeah, we do have the officials here this week. That's one of the reasons they're doing the kickoff now. I actually talked to Brad Allen, who is the crew chief of this, about those new rule changes. Nothing too groundbreaking, but the one thing, whoa, got some wind here. The one thing he did mention that I thought was really interesting is they're all going to be watching the Hall of Fame game tonight and also the rest of this preseason to see what teams are doing and to make sure that nobody's finding any loopholes. He said he's been an NFL referee for 11 years. They've never attempted a rule change of this scale. The NFL always does things real, incrementally. This is a huge change. So there's a little bit of concern from the league that somebody's going to come out here through training camp and come up with some way to game this and break it. And they're going to be watching about that. So we're learning the rules, but then, I don't know, we'll see how things go. They might change. Jaylen Warren, I asked him, hey, do you want to do this? Kickoff return is usually not something you want your star offensive players to do. And he's like, first of all, you know me, I will do whatever this team wants. He's like, but to me, this is just like a running play. It's like I'm just out there running outside zone. It's not really any different. And so he doesn't think from a safety perspective there's any reason that star players couldn't be highly involved in the kickoff. Last thing I want to get to, 2-minute drill. I think there were some questionable decisions by the coaching staff to try to keep things moving along. TJ Watt he did his whole sack celebration, and Justin Fields was still in the pocket before they let that go on to be a completion. But they eventually do score on a George Pickens touchdown over Patrick Queen in the middle of the field, and then the second team also gets on the board. Thomas Graham had an interception in his hands in the end zone, bobbled it. Jeray Jenkins took it from him. What'd you make of that 2-minute drill? First time we've seen Arthur Smith's offense in that setting.
Yeah, I thought it was a mixed bag. I felt like really overall, over the course of the day, it was a mixed bag for the offense in general, especially the quarterbacks. But like you said, we saw TJ Watt do some TJ Watt things. He beat Roger Jones pretty quick, was in the backfield in an instant. But we did see some good things as well. George Pickens caught a back shoulder, really nice throw from Justin on the sideline with good ball placement. And then again, kind of like what you were saying, using George in different ways than we've seen, maybe more so than in the past. But a really nice catch against Patrick Queen. Justin did a good job kind of putting it top shelf. George used his leaping ability to kind of go up and get it. So really competitive period. I definitely think the defense won the day, but the offense did at least have some flashes to where, they were competing out there and not totally getting dominated or anything.
I think so too, and I think we're going to see more competition tomorrow. We'll be back, both of us, at Latrobe Memorial Stadium tomorrow for Friday Night Lights, so make sure you check us out. Make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click that bell for notifications to get all our videos from training camp. That's Derrick Bell. I'm Alan Saunders. Thanks for watching Steelers Now.